What happens when a talented black teen faces a music teacher determined to see him fail? Caleb Monroe stood at the edge of Wexford Conservatory's front steps, his fingers gripping the strap of a fraying backpack that had seen too many bus rides. The brick facade of the elite art school gleamed under the morning sun, its windows tall and imposing. The place felt a world away from his old public school in East Hollow. He was here on a partial scholarship, the kind of opportunity his mother had prayed for every night. "Remember who you are," she had whispered that morning while tying his tie. "You don't need to shrink for anyone." He found his way through echoing marble corridors to room 112, advanced classical piano. Inside, a woman with icy posture was meticulously arranging sheet music across a polished Steinway. Her name, Caleb knew from orientation, was Ms. Claudia Whitmore, department chair and Wexford's gatekeeper of tradition. Her reputation preceded her, brilliant, strict, and notoriously selective. When she looked up and saw Caleb, her expression faltered for the briefest moment. "Can I help you?" "I'm Caleb Monroe. I'm here for advanced classical." She examined him for a beat too long. "Advanced?" Her voice was polite, but her eyes told a different story. "You must be mistaken." "No, ma'am. My placement came from my audition evaluation." He handed her the paper. Her lips compressed as she scanned the schedule. "Well, take a seat in the back. We've already started the semester." Caleb nodded and found a spot beside a girl with curly hair and a warm smile. She leaned over and whispered, "I'm Lily. Don't mind Ms. Whitmore. She makes everyone earn her approval about 6 times before she even looks at them properly." Ms. Whitmore launched into a lecture on romantic period compositions. She never once glanced at Caleb, nor did she call on him, even as his hand hovered for questions. Instead, she turned to a confident boy named Preston Caldwell and praised his rendition of Chopin with almost maternal warmth. When group practice began, Caleb quietly asked about the assignment. Ms. Whitmore's gaze swept past him. "Excuse me." He tried again, louder. She turned slowly. "Yes." "Caleb, was it? In this class, we raise our hands." "I did," he said, steady but firm. 3 times. A few students chuckled. Ms. Whitmore's face remained unreadable. "In a classroom of this level, I must prioritize students who are fully prepared." That evening, Caleb found solace at the neighborhood rec center 3 blocks from his apartment. The place was run down, but its soul resided in the old upright piano tucked into the corner. Caleb sat down and began to play Chopin's Nocturne No. 1, letting muscle memory and emotion guide his hands. Behind him, an old voice chimed in. "You're feeling the music now, not just playing it." It was Mr. Brooks, a retired pianist who volunteered at the center and had taken an interest in Caleb years ago. "She won't even look at me," Caleb muttered. "Some people only see what they expect," Mr. Brooks said, taking a seat beside him. "You're not there to be seen. You're there to be heard. So make them listen." The next week, Ms. Whitmore announced a midterm performance exam. Students would be assigned romantic-era pieces to prepare. When she handed Caleb a sheet of beginner etudes, she said it loud enough for others to hear. "These will help you catch up." Caleb stared at the page. Then he looked up and said, "Actually, ma'am, I'd like to prepare Liszt La Campanella." The room fell silent. Ms. Whitmore's laugh was sharp. "Perhaps you should start with Twinkle, Twinkle, Mr. Monroe." More laughter. Caleb kept his voice calm. "I believe I'm capable." She tilted her head. "I've taught for 25 years. I know potential when I see it." The message was clear. She didn't see it in him. That night, Caleb didn't sleep. He practiced until his fingers burned. Mr. Brooks sat in the corner, offering nothing but quiet presence until, finally, he said, "Don't aim to impress her. Aim to rise so far above her expectations, she can't deny you." 2 weeks later, the practice room piano at Wexford shook with Caleb's determination. Still, Ms. Whitmore continued to ignore him, until the day Principal Devereux walked into class with donors in tow. "This is Mr. and Mrs. Langford," he said. "They're interested in funding our new performance space." "Perfect timing," Ms. Whitmore said, snapping into charm mode. "Perhaps Preston can demonstrate?" Preston played, as did Lily. Then Mrs. Langford, scanning the room, asked, "And what about that young man?" All eyes turned to Caleb. Ms. Whitmore stiffened. "Caleb is still acclimating." "I'd love to hear him," the donor insisted. Under pressure, Ms. Whitmore yielded. "Very well, Caleb." He walked to the piano and sat. The room was heavy with expectation. When he played, his notes weren't perfect, but they were alive, real, passionate. When he finished, silence hung for a beat before Mrs. Langford clapped. "Exceptional progress." "Quite surprising," Ms. Whitmore said tightly. After class, she called Caleb up. "Where did you learn that?" she asked, her voice tight. "I've been playing since I was 7. At the community center. No formal training." "I find that hard to believe." "Belief isn't required," he replied. "Listening is." She didn't respond. But days later, she posted a notice, "Special Performance Assessment, Friday at 2 p.m. All advanced students required to attend." When she handed Caleb the sheet music the next day, his stomach dropped. Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3, one of the most notoriously difficult pieces in classical music. "She's setting you up," Lily whispered. Caleb just nodded. "I know." That night, Caleb didn't go to the rec center. He went home, stared at the impossible sheet music, then called Mr. Brooks. "She's trying to destroy me in front of the school," Caleb said. "Then don't play her game," Mr. Brooks replied. "Play your truth." Friday arrived. The room was packed. Principal Devereux, 2 department chairs, and dozens of students were seated. Ms. Whitmore stood tall. "Mr. Monroe will now perform Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto, first movement." Caleb walked to the Steinway. "I won't be playing that today," he said calmly. Gasps. Ms. Whitmore's lips thinned. With respect, assigning that piece with 24 hours notice wasn't a test. It was sabotage. Principal Devereux raised an eyebrow. "Let's hear what he prepared." "I'll be playing the Goldberg variations, the aria and first 3 variations." A hush fell. Caleb played with tenderness, with strength, with clarity. By the 3rd variation, the energy in the room had shifted. Even Preston stopped smirking. When the final note faded, Principal Devereux applauded. "That was extraordinary." Ms. Whitmore, pale, tried to interject. Then the door opened. "Claudia." The voice was gravel and memory. Everyone turned. "Mr. Brooks," Principal Devereux said in shock. He walked with a cane but radiated calm power. "I taught Claudia once," he said, "and I warned her not to become what the system made of her." To Caleb, he said, "Play the first page of Rachmaninoff." Caleb did, hesitantly, but skillfully. "You see," Mr. Brooks said, "given time, he could master it. That's called teaching. What you did was a trap." Silence. The following week, Ms. Whitmore was placed on leave. Caleb was offered a solo in the donor recital. He almost refused, but Mr. Brooks reminded him, "Don't let this moment be about her. Let it be about the music." That recital became a turning point. Caleb performed Beethoven's Pathetique Sonata, the piece that had won him the scholarship. His mother sat in the front row, beaming. The Langfords promised more funding. And after the performance, an envelope awaited him backstage. A full scholarship offer from the Manhattan School of Music's summer program. As he walked out into the cold night, Caleb whispered, "I did it." "No," Mr. Brooks said beside him. "You're doing it. Every time you sit at that piano and tell the truth, you're doing it." And that was just the beginning. The weeks that followed Caleb Monroe's recital passed like a strange dream, equal parts admiration, suspicion, and cautious silence. Students he'd never spoken to now greeted him in the halls. Teachers who used to look past him now nodded with a kind of apologetic reverence. Yet for all the congratulations and sudden recognition, Caleb felt more exposed than celebrated. It was as if every step he took was being measured against the one performance that had shocked the system. Ms. Whitmore returned to class under a cloud of scrutiny. Her lessons became sterile, efficient but cold, stripped of the imperious grandeur she once wielded like a conductor's baton. She called on students with equal frequency, offered criticism that was blunt but fair, and never once raised her voice. It was as though she had been unplugged from whatever current had once powered her authority. Still, the undercurrent of change rippled through Wexford. On a quiet Thursday morning, Caleb was summoned to Principal Devereux's office. Inside, he found not only the principal, but Dr. Elaine Carter from the State Board of Education, Mr. Brooks, and his mother, who had taken the morning off work in her hospital scrubs. "Caleb," Devereux began, "we're moving forward with reforms inspired in part by your experience. But it's not enough to adjust from the top. Change needs a voice students can trust." Dr. Carter leaned forward. "We'd like you to sit on the advisory board we're forming for inclusive arts education." Caleb blinked. "You want me to advise the state?" "We want you to help make sure what happened to you doesn't keep happening," she replied. His mother squeezed his hand beneath the table. "It's your call, baby. But I think your story might open more doors than just your own." That night, Caleb sat on the rooftop of their building, legs dangling over the edge, his hands wrapped around a warm mug. Mr. Brooks joined him, settling slowly beside him on a folding chair he had dragged up the fire escape. "Feels strange," Caleb said. being listened to. I keep wondering when they'll take it all back. They won't, Mr. Brooks said. Not unless you stop speaking. I'm not a politician. Good. We've got enough of those. What we need are artists who can tell the truth. Caleb turned the mug slowly in his hands. Ms. Whitmore said something the other day. She said I reminded her of the pianist she used to be. Before her injury. Mr. Brooks nodded, his gaze distant. She was exceptional. And when her career ended, she turned her grief into gatekeeping. I want to forgive her, Caleb said quietly. But I don't know if I should. Forgiveness isn't always about permission, Mr. Brooks said. Sometimes it's about refusing to carry what broke someone else. The state's investigation into Wexford's advanced arts departments uncovered a decade-long pattern of quietly weeding out scholarship students of color. Most were transferred out of advanced courses within the first year. A few had dropped out entirely. The board, under pressure from donors and public attention, implemented sweeping reforms, anonymous performance reviews, standardized repertoire assignments, mentorship programs, and a panel review process for all major evaluations. But Caleb's story had done something more. It had inspired. Applications to Wexford's music scholarship program tripled in the next season, many citing Caleb Monroe's story in their essays. Community centers across the city reported increased attendance in their youth music programs. One local nonprofit even started a grant under his name, the Monroe Fund, to provide private piano instruction for underrepresented students. Caleb tried to keep his focus on the keys. In the early spring, he traveled to Manhattan for the conservatory summer program. There, among students from prestigious families and elite schools, he once again found himself underestimated until he played. One by one, skepticism gave way to curiosity, then admiration. It wasn't just that he played well. It was that he played honestly, raw, unpolished at times, but with something impossible to fake, conviction. Late one night, after a small student showcase, a professor approached him. Monroe, correct? Yes, sir. I've listened to hundreds of renditions of Beethoven this semester. Yours was awake. Come see me next week. Let's talk about next year. When Caleb returned home, a letter waited on the kitchen table. A full scholarship offer for Wexford's final year, this time unconditional. Attached was a note from Principal Devereux. You changed more than a department. You changed our school. He laid the letter beside the Steinway practice sheet Mr. Brooks had given him months ago, now yellowed and soft at the edges from repeated folding. His mother came into the room, wiping her hands on a dish towel. That a good letter? It is, he said. But I think the better part is what comes after. You ready for that? He nodded. Yeah, I am. By the end of senior year, Caleb Monroe had performed at City Hall, been interviewed for national radio, and recorded a modest debut album of interpretations on spirituals through the lens of classical piano. He called it Echoes of Both Worlds. Ms. Whitmore never returned to her position. Instead, she accepted a job with a nonprofit developing curriculum for inclusive music education. In a brief email, she thanked Caleb. You exposed the parts of myself I had tried hardest to deny. That's what great music does. It forces us to feel. Caleb never replied. Not out of anger, but because some chords don't need to be played twice. On graduation day, when he walked across the stage in a deep navy gown, the applause thundered louder than for any valedictorian. In the audience, Mr. Brooks stood slowly with his cane and clapped until his hands ached. That night, after the party ended, Caleb returned to the community center one last time before leaving for college. The upright piano was still there, paint chipping, keys uneven. He sat alone and played the first song he ever learned from Mr. Brooks, Amazing Grace, rearranged in his own voice. Outside, summer began to settle over the city. The future was waiting. So were more stages, more tests, more moments where he'd be judged not just for his playing, but for who he was, and who people assumed he couldn't be. But this time, he wasn't playing to prove anything. He was playing to be heard. And he knew now that was more than enough.